people talk about Ernie.
Yeah.
I really feel robbed that I didn't live.
Well, even the fans that came to the game, we were sold out most of the time anyway, wherever we went. And I think the fans got great thrills out of watching him play. You know, he was so smooth and everything, and so they knew the type of person that he was. So, you know, I mean, even the people that came to the games appreciate him. And I know, like the country club used to hire buses to go to some of the playoff games and stuff like that, which is unusual.
Yes.
So
Like the whole town would, or many folks would
yeah.
just, and that didn't. And you think that if you had a team with a 52 wins, but without an Ernie, there would have been less of a following, or what do you think?
Oh, if you didn't have Ernie, you wouldn't have 52 wins to begin with.
That's what I thought when I started asking
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, it was a remarkable record, I thought, because you're playing in all sorts of conditions, traveling all sorts of conditions, and so on. And I can remember Silas Perry was the vice principal at the academy, and of course, the vice principal is a thankless job, but he really, the basketball team he kind of liked, and he told me, he said, you know, I'm so glad that they were able to go unbeaten. He said, nobody, in other words, when they finished, they were undefeated. And he was extremely happy, and I think the players, our players, always treated him with extra respect. And he appreciated that because most of the time he got the garbage that was involved in the school. And so I thought Cy Perry got a lot of satisfaction from the basketball team in our record.
Yeah.
And that was good because I liked him, and he had a thankless job there.
Being the disciplinarian kind.
Mm-hmm.
How was Ernie? He was accepting. He had respect for everybody, as you said. How about towards women and girls? Because that was sort of before feminism we've always had, but it certainly wasn't in the forefront in the 50s. So how did he treat women and girls?
Well, just like everybody else, just with respect, and it's just the way he was. You know, he was open, never looked down on anybody, and was always pleasant, and so on. People just accepted him and liked him, and he did the same, and always congenial. Again, probably overstated it, but the spotlight did bother him some, I think. He'd do the things that, would get him there, but he didn't want the glory that necessarily.
Well, what about, since he didn't like this spotlight, there's also this, I hear that he was quite concerned about his appearance, the way he dressed and stuff. Now, tell me, is that true? Was he, or did you not, you just knew him as a basketball player?
Yeah, but he carried himself in a manner that a star really should carry himself. I think he knew that he was a role model, and so he lived up to it. He always looked nice, always dressed well, and nothing was ever said, or like that, or tried to be flashy or anything, but he just, he was just impressive, that's all you can say. And he always looked nice, neat, clean, everything.
Was he the kind of person who hung out with a certain group of friends, or?
Well, I'd say so. His teammates in the sports, the day I threw him out of the cafeteria, it was a football team. But if it was in the wintertime, it probably would have been the basketball team. So whoever, he was playing with, then he played baseball too. And and he had, a lot of real good friends.
What would be, if you were talking, if we brought you in to talk to some 7th or 8th graders, boys and girls, what would you want them to know about Ernie? or what about Ernie would you like kids nowadays to know, you know?
Well, the things we've been talking about, his humility, the fact that he led us in the Lord's Prayer, I thought was important, and also the fact that, like, a lot of kids in school have trouble, and I think maybe from junior high, starting into high school, that it's a tough time for them. And I think a lot of them probably don't want to act the way they do or get in trouble. But that, to those kids, I always felt, and I told them the same too pretty much, in assemblies and things like that, that Ernie could accept them the way they were, that there wasn't anything wrong with them, and that they should, you know, just be the best that they could be, and not to let a guy like Ernie down, but that there was nothing, he wouldn't come in and say, no, I don't like you because you're this or that or something like that. Another, I guess, self-esteem is the word maybe, but with Ernie, he'd treat you so you had self-esteem. And I thought it was, I don't know if the kids understood what I was trying to say to them, but I think maybe they did, because I looked directly at some that I knew that were having trouble and were in trouble, and just hoped that maybe that would help them a little bit, because that was a gift that he had that not many of us have. Certainly I don't, and I always admired that about him. So.
Did you, in talking with him, have any idea of his ambitions beyond college at all? What he thought he might do?
No, we were, you know, just doing the things we did at the time, and basketball was the main thing. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, from that they went into baseball. Mm-hmm. But as I said, the football coaches from Syracuse were down here a lot during basketball, and it was obvious that they wanted him at Syracuse, and that, they used to have some of the former greats at Syracuse talk to him about coming there and all that. And then to go on to pro football. I mean, that seemed to be accepted, although, like, I didn't talk to him about that at all. Nor ever really trying to influence him in any other way, you know, as far as what he should do. It was just accepted that he'd go more for football than basketball. So.
While he was quiet, he didn't talk a lot. You talked about him kind of holding his hands behind his back. Did he have any expressions that he used a lot, or any?
No, not that I know of anyway. No, no.
I think I just am elevated to hear you talk about him. It really.
Well, it's been a long time, and the same things stand out. You know, that did then, maybe even more so now, because you see so many things now that, like, I don't think the kids in school are having a good time, myself. And we had kind of a rough school, I thought, but the kids had a good time in school, and so did the teachers. And the teachers were excellent. And I think if the kids today aren't exposed to something like that, you know, school should be fun. And we enjoyed it. Things I hear now are that kids aren't too happy and teachers aren't too happy, and I think that's terrible.
Yeah, that is.
No, as far as coaching goes too, I don't care what you say now about the way kids are and so on, and I hear different things about them. Nobody likes to lose. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying that if you play a sport, you don't want to lose. And that hasn't changed, I don't think. No. And we didn't want to lose either. No. So. No. And with Ernie, we didn't.
No.
So.
But whenever anybody speaks about him, there's a twinkle in the eye. There's something.
Well, and Ernie Davis might come along once in a lifetime, but if he does, you better be very thankful. I had great basketball players before I came here, even. But nobody like him, like Ernie. As a matter of fact, I don't think there ever was anybody like him.
Doesn't sound like it, if people wouldn't talk about him the way they do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I hope it was all right.
It was wonderful. Anything you'd like me to ask? Bob, no, anything more you want to say?
No, I think we've said everything.
Oh, I think you.
Probably more than once.
Well, that's okay,
But,
that's okay,
yeah.
that's okay. Thank you so much.
All right, well, to get out.
Really?
And I think that's awful because when I taught, it was fun, and I always enjoyed it, and I think most of the people that I taught with did. And Elmira Free Academy, an outstanding faculty. And
Should we get going? Okay. And I actually, I don't even introduce this, right? I mean, we just start talking.
Yeah, I would maybe get an introduction with the name so that if somebody besides us is looking at this, we know who we're talking to and a little bit of background, but other than that.
Okay, you want me to say something?
Yeah, if you could just,
Okay, okay. Well, Mr. Jim Flynn, it's good to see you here today. We're here to talk about Ernie Davis, and you knew him well. Could you tell us about how you first encountered Ernie, when you first saw him?
well, I came here from Norwich, although I'd been born in Elmira and lived here. And one of the things I remember, of course, Ernie had played as a freshman, both football and basketball, and the Bill Whiffler that used to coach Ernie told me that Ernie was only good 10 feet to the basket. And Ernie came up to me before the season started and said, "Coach, I'm only good 10 feet to the basket. You should know that." And I kind of got a kick out of it because I told him, I said, "This isn't where I want you, Ernie, but I'll teach you how to play where I want you. You have to be willing to do it." You know, and he was the hardest worker that I ever had anything to do with. From the very time that we started, he was at practice early. By the time the team started practicing, he had worked up a great sweat, just trying to do the things and master the things that we wanted him to do. And he became excellent, playing what would be a power forward now, I guess they'd call it. So that was my first contact with him there. But Ben Schwartzwalder, who coached Syracuse football and later had Ernie, I've heard him say many times that Ernie was the hardest worker that he ever had. And Ben Schwartzwalder coached for 35 or 40 years, and he was one of the toughest college coaches I ever knew. So that kind of a compliment coming from him meant a lot. Ernie meant a lot to him, as he did to every coach that ever had him, I think.
Why was it that Ernie and his previous coach thought that he was a 10-foot player and you wanted to develop a different facet?
Well, he was probably 6'2" or so as a freshman, and they used him inside more, closer to the basket, because he was strong and a good rebounder and everything, and I can see that. But the way we played our style of basketball, the scoring was concentrated in the forwards, and that's where I wanted Ernie. And of course, he became the leading scorer in the Southern Tier Conference, and he could shoot from the outside or the inside. I remember one game we played Southside the first time, and they played a zone and laid off him. I think he made 3 shots in a row, and Southside called timeout, and team came over, and Ernie said to me, "They think I can't shoot from the outside. How dare they?" I mean, you know that. And I kind of laughed because he really couldn't before because he hadn't played there, but he was a little bit insulted that time. So, yeah, he became great by his own doing, really, at hard work.
That confidence that you suggest there when he says they were laying off me and they think I can't shoot. You hear about his confidence, but you also hear that he was this humble person. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Humility. He was humble. That's maybe one of his greatest traits. And he had quiet confidence and quiet leadership. I'll never forget, when I first came, we practiced and everything. We came to our first game and the team's huddle, before the opening whistle. And Ernie led us in the Our Father. And I had coached for several years before coming here, and that had never occurred to me that anybody would say a prayer. Of course, prayers are supposed to, not be part of the public schools and so on. Not that that was a factor, it wasn't. But everybody accepted the fact that Ernie led us in the Lord's Prayer. And he did for every game that he played that I coached from then on. And everybody just accepted it. Here we had different races, religions, nationalities, what have you. It didn't make any difference. And he just had that quiet confidence that I always felt that he made everybody on the team better than they were, each individual, including myself too. And it's just the way he was. And yet, if you're playing somebody he was the greatest chips are down guy I ever saw. When the going got tough and something was on the line, Ernie was at his best. But if you're beating somebody badly, and we had a good enough team where we did do that, not humiliating anybody, but we'd get a good lead, you'd have to look for Ernie. He kind of disappeared. He never would embarrass an opponent, and nothing was ever said about it, but it's just the way he was. And so those are some of the things about him. I don't know if that gives you a picture of how he was, but boy, if it was tough out there and you needed him, he was there. But if it came to maybe running the score up or something like that, he wasn't interested. And it was never, an obvious show. It's just the way he was.
Did it take you a while to notice that he was doing that?
No, not at all. He was just remarkable, that's all. And even in school, the teachers liked him. I used to think that some of the teachers used to hope that he'd come in without his homework, and say, well, I'm sorry, we were on a road trip down to Binghamton, I didn't get my homework done or something like that, so they could say, that's okay, Ernie. They wanted to please him, but he always did his work. And so then the other kids, the kids in school liked him. He had a lot of fun when he was in school. The picture that you have of him, like, you have this man on a pedestal, but nobody ever had more fun than he had when he was in school. He just enjoyed himself. And we had a lot of roughnecks in the school, and I think some of them didn't even like themselves, but they all liked Ernie. And he could accept people as they were. You didn't have to, I think you and I, at least I know myself, sometimes you form an opinion, right or wrong, and a lot of times I've been wrong. And so, well, I don't like this about that person or something like that. You don't say it, but you feel that way. He wasn't like that. He could accept anybody. And I always thought that because of that, the other people sensed it, and they could accept him too, and they would defend him. I mean, it was unbelievable. One thing that I'll never forget is we had a lot of older teachers. We had a great faculty at the school. And they honored Ernie after his senior year. He had won the Heisman Trophy, signed with the Browns, and they had a big dinner for him at Notre Dame. But there were only so many that could be admitted. So after the dinner was over, they allowed people to come in and go in the bleachers and, be part of the after ceremonies. And I looked up in the bleachers, and here these teachers that he'd had in high school 4 years before now. He's been out 4 years. 50, 60, 70 years old, some of them, are scrambling up in the bleachers to hear Ernie honored. I couldn't get over it. It just, they had Rockefeller was there, Art Modell from the Cleveland Browns was there, John F. Kennedy sent him a telegram. But to me, seeing those teachers go up there meant a lot more than all the rest of it. It was a tribute to him.
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
When you say he had a lot of fun in school, I I find that interesting because we get such a picture of him, like with the Lord's Prayer and what a good person he is. We kind of don't hear about the fun side. Can you give me some examples of that?
Oh, he just enjoyed himself, and he always said, I'll never forget one time, this probably isn't the kind of thing you might want to hear, but I had cafeteria duty when I first came. And one day, I was new. A lot of the football players, and they had a great team that year, and a lot of big fellas too. They came in the cafeteria and started raising heck. Nothing bad, but just upsetting things. So I threw them all out. Just told them, get out of here. Ernie was one of them. And they weren't doing anything bad, but I just felt that as athletes and leaders that they could do better than that. So I just got mad and threw them out. They went without protest or anything, and I wasn't a known quantity there at the time. And I've often thought of that later, you know, that it's just one of those things that happened. But they were horsing around, carousing and so on, and so that's one thing that happened. But I can always remember just anything that involved fun and the spirit of the school he was great at. Yet one time, after he came back from Syracuse his senior year, they asked him to speak in the auditorium to the student body. And I'm sure that's one of the hardest things he ever did, because he got up on the stage, and we were sitting on the stage behind him. He had his hands behind his back, and he was wringing those hands like you wouldn't believe. I'm sure it's one of the hardest things he ever did, because he was a quiet hero. He never, they used to compare him in school to great athletes of the time, Jim Brown and so on, some of the basketball players. And he didn't like that at all. He wanted just to be Ernie Davis, just himself. And I'm sure that speaking to the kids that day, it was embarrassing for him to hold himself up as a model. Like, he knew, you know, that he was a model, but it wasn't something he did easily. He was more by action than talk. Mm-hmm. And today you see a lot of this in your face and all that sort of thing. He was a complete opposite of that. And opponents respected him, just unbelievably. And a lot of times after games, when we would have won by a pretty good score, the opposing players would come over and shake hands with him. Just, you know, he just brought out the best in everybody, I guess you'd say. So
maybe that had something to do with that acceptance. People felt so accepted by him. I don't know.
I always thought that, and that was, to me, that was one of the great things, because I think sometimes we should all be more like that, but we aren't, and he was, and it was just a part of his nature, and I always marveled at that, and yet I never heard anybody else really talk about it. But to me, that was one of the great attributes that he had.
How was he about accepting himself? How was he about himself?
Well, he believed in himself, if that's what you mean, but we went down to play Vestal. We'd won 51 straight games and won the league championship and sectional championship, and this was for the league and sectional championship too, I guess. And it would have been our last game of the season. We played Vestal on, I think it was on their home court, I can't remember. Anyway, we went to Binghamton. And it's tougher to travel to somebody else's home area and play. So we were warming up and everything, and things looked all right. The first play of the game, Ernie got the ball, just stopped, shot, and made it. And I thought, well, I don't have to worry anymore tonight because he's there, you know. And it's the way he was. I mean, he knew how important the game was. He knew how important it was to get a good start. And he just took it on himself to do it. And that's the way he was, though. And so I don't know if that answers you, but he believed in himself. But it was a quiet belief. I mean, it wasn't anything, here I am sort of thing. He got more publicity in high school than you can imagine. How he endured it and lived with it and was able to do it, I don't know. But it never affected him. And I think it always kind of embarrassed him a little bit. But Elmira had a great sports editor at the time, Al Millett, and he just loved to write about Ernie, and so did the rest of the papers. And of course, he was so outstanding with football and basketball and everything that you had to write about him. But he handled it very well. And as long as we mention it, I think he was a better basketball player in high school than football.
Really?
Oh yeah, I always thought that.
Do you
And
think he should have gone on to basketball?
well, football is where you get the scholarship and so on. And the Syracuse staff was down here a lot. Ben Schwartzwalder and the staff, and Marty Harrigan, the football coach, was from Syracuse, and Tony DeFilippo was a staunch Syracusan, and so that's the way Ernie went. But I always thought if he wanted to go with basketball, that he had a future in the professional basketball if he wanted it. He reminded me of Elgin Baylor. Now, you never heard of him, I'm sure, but he was a great player for Los Angeles years and years ago, able to hang in the air, things like that. And Ernie could do all those things, too. So he reminded me of Elgin Baylor, the way he played. And Elgin Baylor was a great professional. So
that was his natural gifts were there, but then he practiced.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. He had ability, but he was the hardest worker, too, that you ever saw. And I'm sure that any coach that he ever played for would agree with that. I've heard Schwartzwalder say many times that he never had anybody. He said he was the first one at practice, and they used to have to throw him out when everybody, each day after everybody else left, and they had to throw him out most of the time. So.
What about with his hard work ethic? What other things besides athletics did he work hard at?
Well, he always had his work done in school, and the teachers marveled at him. Some of them used to come up to me and say, I don't know how he does it, because we'd play twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays usually, and there was always at least one trip to Binghamton in there, which was we'd get home late at night, and so the teachers just marveled at him that he would keep up like he did. And as I said, I'm sure they wanted to help him more than he would let him. That's the way he was. He just did what he was supposed to do. And
how do you think it was that he sort of you said that he elevated you as a coach,
everybody else,
and others on the team? What was it, do you think, that allowed him to do that? How did he make everybody better?
He was there. He was a leader. You knew with Ernie on your side, I mean, you were about 10 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds, and nobody better get in your way. He had that effect on people. And if there was, like, a small example, maybe somebody would take a shot and it would go around the rim and start to drop out. All of a sudden, there was Ernie tipping it in. Nobody saw him, don't know where he came from. The place was usually packed, and the stands would just erupt. You just knew you could count on him. And as I said, when the pressure was on was when he was best, and the other players knew that too, and that breeds confidence.
Okay.
So, and of course he made me look good as a coach. So anyway.
You met him when he was 14 or 15?
Probably 15, yeah.
Did he seem like a 14 or 15-year-old? I mean, or did he seem like a 40-year-old?
No, he was mature for his age, and very serious about sports and about life, too, I think. He's very religious, too, as indicated by the Our Father and his faith in God. And I've always felt that I think Ernie knew he was dying, and I think his great faith in God is what sustained him there, because I don't think anybody ever heard him complain, either at practice or games or anything like that, never alibied, and I think when he died he was the same way. Didn't feel sorry for himself or anything, just was able to endure it or live with it. But it was part of his makeup. He was almost too good to leave on earth, it seemed.
Yeah. But people didn't resent his goodness.
No, not at all.
They,
Oh, yeah, if, it was almost like, an idol, a real idol, and, as I said, the school was big and everything, but the one person that everybody admired there, from the principal to the worst student in the school, was Ernie Davis.
you said that he knew he was dying. Do you mean when he was at Syracuse, or
No,
are you
in
suggesting?
Cleveland,
Oh, okay, later, way later, when he knew.
yes.
Okay, but he didn't feel sorry for himself.
No.
He just-
Now, I don't know that he knew. I feel sure in my own mind that he did, because he never said anything to anyone that I know of. But he's a type of person that even in death he could accept it. He was kind of a superstar in death too.
Yeah.
Just remarkable. And so that, I think you can tell a lot of these things by the imprint that he's left on the community, and this type of thing here that you're doing. But-
It's interesting that the word acceptance comes up again, even when you're talking about death, with him. Yeah.
He was, you wouldn't say superhuman, but he was able to do things that most of us mortals, I don't think, could handle. But he, for some gifts he had that enabled him to do it. That would be my opinion anyway.
Do you think that, what's the origin of that in Ernie Davis, do you think? I mean, we're just guessing, but what?
Well, I don't really know, except the characteristics that we've spoken of, the humility, the religious, deep religious belief, respect for others too. Because that's why, like, he wouldn't, he was the all-time leading scorer of the Southern Tier Conference. But when he could have scored a bushel of points, he wouldn't. They came when the going was tough and the opponents were good, and we played a lot of good teams then. So he was kind of a contrast too, when he could have been like you see some of these players today pounding their chests and, how good I am and everything. Not him. He's just exactly the opposite.
From your knowledge of him, do you think that some of that came from his family?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that it did, yes.
Did you know his mom or his uncles or any?
Yes, I knew his mother, and she used to say that, Ernie's not a saint. He's, I think maybe one time in grade school or something, he got sent home or something for some, I don't know what it was, but I've heard her say different times. Now, he's just an ordinary person. He's not a saint. But I think as he grew older, these character traits that he had just came out. And so he, in the eyes of a lot of us, he is a saint,
Yeah,
regardless.
That's sure what I hear,
Yeah.
when you talk to folks. One thing that I wondered about, and maybe in '58 was the year he graduated, right? 1958, I think, around there. He was in his
Okay, I think so, yeah, 58.
Yeah, and that was kind of the beginning of the civil rights movement or in our country. And I'm just wondering about the African American community and Ernie being African American in Elmira, New York. Can you speak about that at all as far as the?
Not really, no, it just wasn't a factor. I used to get the Binghamton paper when I came here because I didn't know anything about the teams that we were going to play, and we opened up, I think it was with Binghamton North, and I read in the paper that I got after the game that we had started 5 black players, and I didn't even realize it. And so they had picked up on it and made it a big deal, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know we did. And that's the way it was. I mean, it wasn't black or white or anything else. We were just a team, that's all. And you don't win the way we did unless you are a team. If there's any difficulty or animosity or anything like that, that doesn't happen, you're not successful. And everything that Ernie did was successful. He took a real beating his senior year in football. When he came out for basketball, I didn't know if he was going to be able to play basketball because his back hurt him, he couldn't move, and it did not look good at all the first week that we had basketball practice. So he did overcome that, however, and everything worked out all right. But he had been the center of attraction in football, and everybody pointed for him, and so he took a beating. But
how did he get physically in shape then, or how did he
after that,
Yeah.
well, he couldn't bend his knees or move much, which you have to do in basketball, especially on defense, but also offense. So I went home after I saw him when he first came out, and I thought, we got to do something here, and I don't know what. But we had a drill where you put your hands behind your back and you just move from side to side, defensive drill, flexing your knees and so on. So the next day I said, Ernie, why don't we try this here? And I said, just go easy. If it bothers you, forget it. And if you think it helps, we'll continue it. So he started, and it loosened him up. So after about a week of that, he was okay. And it was like a miracle. So when he went to, after the season was over and everything, he had a great year. I told him when he went to Syracuse, I thought before football, he should get down to practice before the team and work out like that. So that he was good and loose before they started any contact drills or anything. And he told me later when he was in college that he was doing that. So, so that was just, fortunate.
Yeah.
But
As you talked about, he's a quiet leader and had a quiet confidence. Was he a student leader? Was he elected? Do you remember to any?
Yeah, I think he held student offices too. But he was revered. Just everybody wanted to do anything to have him notice him, and it's still true today. Even if you talk to some of the people that are involved in Ernie Davis matters, they still it's really out of love and loyalty for the type of person that he was.
How was he with little kids? Did he have quite a following of younger kids coming to the games?
Oh yeah, all the kids really looked up to him, and he was good. He just the same as with anybody else, just excellent. And I think the spotlight bothered him a little bit. He didn't want to be the hero that he was, but he still handled it.
Was he? This is kind of a goofy question, which we'll probably edit out. But did he